Bienvenidos a este capítulo de Data Revolution. Hoy tenemos el gusto, el placer de tener un invitado verdaderamente inspirador. Tenemos el gusto de contar con Mitch Lowe. Quienes lo conozcan, es uno de los fundadores de Netflix. Y el día de hoy vamos a hablar de temas que realmente están revolucionando la industria del entretenimiento, entre otras industrias que nosotros conocemos actualmente. Y vamos a hablar de la IA y su futuro. ¿Cómo lo ven desde este mundo que se está realmente reinventando hoy en día, el mundo del entretenimiento, de hacer películas y por supuesto de cómo llegar al público de manera adecuada? La tecnología sin duda está haciendo cambios fundamentales en cómo se venía haciendo la producción. Y por supuesto, Machine Learning o aprendizaje automático, entre otras tecnologías, están impactando de manera directa y significativa cómo se hace esto. Bienvenido, Mitch. Thank you very much for your time. It has been a pleasure, and we finally had some time to talk about the technology.
Yes, yeah, I'm glad to be here. Nice to talk with you, Jorge.
Thank you very much for your time. And let's talk a little bit about how it's going to change the entertainment, the AI in the next, or already changing the industry, the AI in our world, Mitch.
Yeah. AI, at least currently, is involved in three categories or three areas of entertainment. There is the creation part, the kind of the creative ideas, the scripting, writing, etc. And that, at the moment, is the most controversial and the hardest to bring acceptance from the Hollywood community and the entertainment community. The second is in production, whether it's pre-production, post-production, creating the sets, camera angles, etc. And that is proving to be an area where there's significant cost savings in the production of a piece of content. There is still controversy there because a cinematographer, for example, has a certain way of setting up cameras, the right lenses, and that is their art. And so this type of AI is still a little bit controversial, but the cost savings are pretty significant. And then the third is on the marketing, the reaching the right audience, giving the right message. How do you get someone to want to watch a piece of content? And AI is become very powerful there, helping whether it's in your advertising campaign or your media. So those are the three areas. And today, almost every couple weeks, there seems to be a new innovation in each of those areas. So, I think the entertainment community is divided between an old school and a new school that is actually using these tools in the same way they use the internet, in the same way they use search, and actually creating amazing new content with new ideas. And then there's the old school, which reminds me of the cinema industry that for many years would not play a Netflix movie because they were upset that in their words, they thought Netflix was destroying their business. I think I might have shared the story with you.
Yeah,
I gave a speech in Cannes right after Luc Besson, the director. And when he heard that I came from Netflix, he shunned me. And I asked him, what's the problem? And he said, you guys are destroying the true cinematic experience. And he is one of the people that kept Netflix out of the Cannes Film Festival for many years. So it's, this is one of these things that is inevitable. And the true artists are learning how to use these tools to create new ideas, create content that couldn't have been created in the past. So it's an interesting dynamic to watch take place.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of changes in the last couple of years. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Especially now that we have seen some virtual influencers. Have you seen the virtual influencers where
Yeah.
we have people that didn't exist and they have a lot of followers
Yeah.
in the industry? Do you see the future coming that way with the this type of influencers that they don't really exist?
Yeah. Well, it's that too is inevitable. That, I mean, when you think about making a movie or a series, one of the biggest problems or one of the biggest slowdowns and costs are the famous actors, are the people that require big contracts and take months and months to negotiate. And so, the kind of the ideal scenario for a producer or a filmmaker is to be able to replicate, to essentially create those characters. Mm-hmm. But, you can't create the brand that a George Clooney has built over, 30, 40 years, mm-hmm. instantly. It might be 20 years from now, these virtual influencers are stars like, Julia Roberts and, the big names out there. So mm-hmm. It's definitely a great way to create an influencer that's popular. So it's one of those things that's going to happen. It'll be interesting how consumers accept it or not.
Especially because they don't get old, so you can keep them in
they don't get old.
The same age.
They don't get old. I definitely can feel that.
Yeah. What do you see coming in terms of culture for this kind of filmmakers? Because you have different personalities and at the same time different people from different ages. What type of culture we need to develop for this type of industry to move at the same pace?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's there are this is kind of another stage of this, what I think many people call the democratization of mm-hmm. content creation, and with the inexpensive equipment that can be acquired now that is comparable to the best equipment 20 years ago, to more and more people being interested in creating media. I think this is really a renaissance, as long as all these new creators get good at what they're doing, and follow it as a career and use the tools to be even more creative than they could have without these tools. So I love this idea that there's going to be more original ideas coming from more and more people from all walks of life, because now they can do that, using AI tools, using, amazing equipment that can be purchased for less than $1,000, editing tools and so on that are available online. I think it's going to just open up, the original content that, a small community, in a few areas around the world, they almost always keep repeating the same storyline. And it doesn't matter whether you're in Mumbai or Lima, you have stories that keep getting repeated due to the high cost of creating the content. And because of that high cost, producers want to take the least risk possible. They want to, they'll make a sequel or they'll repeat a story that's been successful. Now, with these tools and with the ability to create content for a fraction of the cost, I think there's going to be much more, interesting new content. So that, to me, is where the culture needs to keep up with these tools, with these abilities to create content.
Yeah, and the ability to create content, like you're saying, the machine learning is part of since the very beginning of the streaming platforms. What do you see is the real impact of machine learning since the very beginning until now and in the future? You see more and more impact with machine learning in the industry?
Oh yeah, it's from the early days,
Mm-hmm.
when the internet was first getting going, in 95, 96. The machine learning was essentially creating rating systems and asking people to identify the content that they enjoyed and using that as a way to know, what content to create, how to market content, etc. And then it evolved into, we don't even need to have you rate content. We'll observe your behavior, and that
Mm-hmm.
behavior will either go into a collaborative filter, which would be putting you in mentor groups of people just like you, and assuming if other people in your group liked something, you're going to like it too. And now it's using incredibly sophisticated analysis of all the other things you do. It looks at your social media. It looks like, where do you travel? It looks at what kind of car you have. And from that, it can deduce kind of how to market to you, how to find content that you'll enjoy. So and it's just beginning that evolution, where you start to understand someone maybe better than maybe better than they know themselves, is kind of a constant progress, at least from the 90s. And of course, there was even older, marketing systems that were used. So I think we're just scratching the surface of what will happen in the future.
Scratching the surface. That's,
And by the
I think,
way,
yeah.
it's because of what we talked about before, about this huge increase in content
Mm-hmm.
creation. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be millions and millions of people creating, very good content. There needs to be a way to identify what you're going to like, so that you don't have to look at a million pieces of content, because that actually, in fact, I've done research where the more options that are presented to a person, the less they consume. You overwhelm them with choice. And we identified many years ago that when you present more than 60 choices to a person,
They get
they
lost.
just give up. Yeah. And, with 50,000 episodes being created a year worldwide, and on top of millions of already created content, there's just, and I'm not even including YouTube or TikTok or any of that, because that adds another billion a year pieces of content. So, this will be this, machine learning evolving to understanding a consumer is almost mandatory for this content to be seen.
And what do you think that not only the streaming companies, but some other companies who are interested in machine learning and some new applications, deep learning, neural networks? We spent some time about a month ago talking about neural networks. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think the algorithms are playing, the role they are playing for this type of companies? Do they need to bring people into the company? Do they need to outsource the services? It's better to have your own people to understand how your company needs to understand their own customers. What's
Mm-hmm.
better for them?
Well, it really is. There's pros and cons to both sides. To If you're big enough and you build the technology internally, you run the risk of biasing
The
the
bias.
results.
Mm-hmm.
You end up getting some of the results that you want to have happen, and you don't open the doors to the kind of diversity that you might get if you used a third party, or you used multiple third parties to create your algorithms. The problem always becomes, for it's kind of the size of your company. If you're a big company like Netflix, you definitely want it internally. You want it internal. You don't want to share, that understanding with others. And no matter what, when you use a third party, even if they sign NDAs and they say they'll never share, these algorithms, they have to,
they modify the structure of the algorithm. Is a different product.
They'll modify it, but they'll use their understanding of the algorithm they built for you to build something really good for your competitor. And, so it becomes a kind of an issue for medium and small size companies that can't afford to build their own internal teams. And they get a lot of value. So that, there's definitely pros and cons going each of those two options.
We have heard about what you're saying is how to utilize this type of technologies as machine learning that we mentioned before. You have different content. You said how many movies in the worldwide they are?
Well, there's about 7,000 movies created each year and 50,000 series episodes each year.
That's a lot of content.
And I'm not talking about, and then 1 billion YouTube clips and another 1 billion TikTok clips. So, in fact, recently there was a story about how the streaming world has now come down to two players. It's YouTube versus Netflix.
That's true.
And that's kind of where the future lies, is where are people going to see their content? And in one of the slides that I've shared with you, it shows that the quantity of content being watched on YouTube dwarfs Netflix. There is much more content. It's not movies, it's not TV series, but it's,
what type of content?
It's a combination of some influencers, but it's mostly kind of people teaching you how to do something, how to clean your vacuum cleaner, how to get the best deal on travel. That dwarfs the amount of content that's watched to watch a TV series or a movie.
You can find the same thing in TikTok, right? Or not?
Yes.
It's pretty similar.
Yeah, it's I think the only difference really, and I'm not sure this is worldwide like this, but at least in Latin America and the US, the age group for TikTok users tends younger than YouTube.
Okay, got you. And during this year, in 2025, we've been talking about the Gen AI. And how fast is Gen AI being used at this point of time in this type of industries? You see it. How do we see Gen AI working in this environment of productions?
Well, there's like I said, in the production side, there's already a fair amount of use. There are companies that do the that outsource show running to the studios and to the series makers that use generative AI to create the sets, create the background art, and to determine where the cameras should be, and most importantly, to lay out a shooting schedule. I'll just give you an example. A typical movie of 2 hours in length, there might be 200 to even 300 hours of film taken to make that, to bring it all down to 2 hours. And that every hour of shooting costs money. And most of it is because the director is really the ultimate boss of everything. And every single scene, he or she wants everybody on set, and it's this expression, hurry up and wait. You go to a film set and there are 50 people, 60 people, 80 people, 100 people all sitting around 90% of the time. And there's there's shots being filmed that will never be used because the process of the director wanting, cut after cut after cut.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the generative AI is saying, wait a minute, let's just film little snippets. We'll bring, our actor on stage. We'll do an 8-second clip here, a 20-second clip here, but we'll do it all one after the other. And we don't need everybody else on set. So some of these generative AI applications are reducing that 200 hours by at least 50%. And so that's a big place where it's being used. Of course, in marketing as well. It's not being used so much in story creation, although there are a few small studios that are, and many of them are outsourced to countries outside the US, mostly for fear of the way the unions react in the US.
Yeah, especially the unions that maybe can bring a lot of challenges. Not only writers are part of the unions as well, right?
Right. Yeah. You have the WGA and you have the DGA, et cetera. So Directors Guild, Writers Guild, Producers Guild, and especially, the writers who went on strike a few years ago are, concerned, and rightfully, about the use of this. The worst part is if a studio knows that you are using AI to a big extent, you can get blackballed. They basically won't work with you because they're afraid of what the actors are going to say or what the writers are going to say. So, it's generative AI today is being used mostly to outsource to other countries, especially Latin America, and creating of just clips. So there's a company, for example, that has done, some of the scenes in big action films and done them for a fraction of the cost. And it's not because they do it, with a lower cost crew. It's because they use this generative AI to create a schedule that is more organized and isn't subject to the whims of a director.
Wow. Do you see a full AI movie coming, created fully?
Oh, yeah.
And marketed and everything done only with AI?
Yeah, I think first what we're going to see are big action films with still with real actors, but 80-90% of the content is created using AI and produced with AI and marketed with AI. Later, you'll see, artificial people, but I think that's still, a ways. It doesn't make too much. There's animation, which always is, fake people, not real people, and that I think will continue. But I think the merging of those two is still a ways away, mostly because, those actors won't have a following.
Wow. We spent some time talking a month ago about the citizen movie makers.
Yeah.
Do you see the citizen being a movie maker and be successful?
I think that there will be
the independent film and creators.
There'll be a lot more than there are today, and there's going to be more citizen filmmakers who will be break even or profitable in the future. But they're going to be, at least currently, it's not going to be because they sell a lot of tickets at the cinema or make big streaming deals. It's mostly be with partnerships with brands. Most of the money for the citizen filmmakers is going to be almost like incorporating like a product placement in their content. So the companies that sell products to consumers are the ones who are going to be paying for this, paying these filmmakers.
Well, so
not everyone, but a lot.
No, not everyone. You're right. But with this information that you're sharing with us, from your point of view, Mitch, how many people we will need within the next 5 years to make a film, to make a TV commercial, for instance, with a lot of action, to be outdoors, something really extreme that requires a lot of resources, people moving from one place to another. What at the end we're going to need? How many people just to make this happen?
Right. Well, there are a few companies out there who have big experience in making very big, successful films, who are now have now developed an AI and a generative AI program, and they claim that they can make a movie that previously cost $100 million to make, and they can do it for 20 million and make money. And it's quite amazing, and these aren't people who are new to the industry. These are people who've made 300 successful films, have won awards, etc. And they basically have programmed, like, let's say, I want an Ang Lee film. I want to replicate an Ang Lee film. They've ingested every single camera angle, every single length of scene, that Ang Lee uses, and they can replicate that. And what's really interesting, by the way, is each director has a footprint, has a pattern, almost like a thumbprint. Some of them are one after the other, 2.5 second shots. If you look at the Bourne series, the Matt Damon Bourne movies, you look at those, and one of the kind of highlights is it's 2 second shot, 2 second shot. It's one after the other, and it's distracting for a lot of people, but some people really love it. So I think there's going to be some big box office films made for a fraction of the cost, and they're going to be incredibly profitable. They almost don't need to be, in the past, you put out $100 million film, and if it broke 100 million, you probably lost 100 million in marketing. With this type of technology, you could make $100 million film for 20, spend 50 marketing, and now you've actually made money on a film
more money.
That didn't really do well. The minute that happens, producers and studios are going to find a way to do more and more of that. And I think that goes for TV series as well.
So one of the concerns for the creative community is the ethical part, because they spend a lot of time creating, making something happen.
Yeah.
And you can use, I want to say, large language models or ChatGPT, you call it some other product. Take the script of 5 or 7 movies, upload it, and ask for a new movie, combining everything. So the ethical part, do you think is going to be regulated, or how is going to displace all these people concerned about this?
Well, what I really hope happens, and there are people working on this, is almost like an RIAA model that regulates the music industry, where if you use a clip longer than 5 seconds in an advertisement, in a film, or et cetera, the RIAA will make sure you pay a royalty to the writer, the producer, the creator of that content. And that same thing happens to has to happen here in AI, so that all that content that gets ingested has to count for some value in an output that is based on looking at analyzing what has been ingested. So it kind of reminds me of the original model we used at Netflix to compensate studios. Was someone paid, let's say $10 a month for a subscription.
Mm-hmm.
We would, and these are the days where most of the content on Netflix was licensed, from Disney and Paramount, et cetera. So what they would do in order to calculate how much to pay Paramount is they would say, okay, this customer paid $9.95. They watched 5 movies, of which one of them was a Paramount title. Therefore, we generated $2 of that $9.95 on a Paramount title. Our deal is we pay Paramount 35% of the revenue. So they would do 35% of $2 and pay Paramount. And I think something like that has to happen to kind of remove the ethical problem of using, artists and creators' creation to then output a AI result. So if they say, okay, the large language library, that was looked at included one piece from this writer, and in total there was 100 pieces, and the value of what they got was X. You just divide. In other words, and there's probably has to be a minimum, like there is in Spotify, where you might at a minimum get 2 cents per play, 2 pennies per play, but if you get that or the greater of the percentage of content that customer used. So it has to be resolved, and the technology these days in the world is so sophisticated. I'm sure someone will come up with a way to do that.
Yeah, that was true. And at the same time, Mitch, discern between the real and the deep fake that we also can find out there, especially now we see many presidents in deep fake. How we're going to control the deep fake? Is there any way to do something about that?
It's there are there is software that can identify a deep fake, but by the time you identify it, it's too late. You've already made an impression on someone. So it's almost like like people need to be educated to know that they can't rely 100% on what they see and what they hear. They which is really a sad thing, because what do I can't tell you how many times I look through a TikTok, and it's news about something like an earthquake or a president resigned, and it looks totally real. And I go, wow, what happened? I mean, just the other day, there was a TikTok that said that the electricity went out in Lisbon for like 2 days. And of course, the electricity a couple months ago did go out for about 4 hours. But I have a friend who lives in Lisbon, and I called them and said, so how you doing without electricity? And said, what do you mean? There's no problem here. So it's just hard to, I guess you just have to become a total skeptic, which means things can't, you can't be emotional, but that's for some people will know that, but probably 90% of the people who see things will believe them, because we're trained as, throughout our lives to believe what you see more than what you hear. And so it's going to be, the whole deep fake issue is going to be a real problem for this generation and the next, couple after us.
Yeah. We see things coming throughout the years, and some things that they don't change. For instance, you said electricity. Electricity will continue to be part of our daily life. You agree with me, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
What things you see changing during the next coming years, and what type of thing do you think they won't change? We will need it. And one of them maybe is AI, but what do you think not changing?
Well, the things that aren't going to change so much are I think the basic needs, that we all have. We all need a place to sleep. We all need food to eat.
Mm-hmm.
We need relationships. While we kind of inherently want children, there seems to be a change in young people's not really feeling the same way my generation felt about the need to have a child. More and more young people don't feel like they need to own things, like they don't need to own a house, they don't need to own a car, they don't need to have a vacation house. They're used to picking and choosing what to pay for, and usually it's kind of a rental model. So I think that results in successive future generations that have a little bit less like connection with a stable environment. They're more and more comfortable with things changing because that's how they grew up. The innovation cycle is down to less than a year, where just 10 years ago it was 5-year cycles, and 20 years before that it was 20-year cycles, and before that it was 100-year cycles. So I think what's going to happen, that's going to change, is our culture and our kind of what our needs are, what we really want out of life. And they might still be, I want a place to sleep, I want a relationship, I may want children. They're going to be thought of differently. And at the same time, mm-hmm. in my world, in the media world, it's going to become so invasive and so overwhelming that it'll look like a sci-fi movie. In other words, it's not just watching content on your phone or on your television in your living room or on your laptop. I think when you're walking down the street in Mexico City, you'll have monitors implanted in the sidewalk and all over the walls, and it will know who you are, and it will try to sell you something. There'll be an influencer that knows exactly what you want and will give you a 6-second spiel while you are standing there waiting for a bus. It may even be that they know where you are in watching a TV episode and play it for you successively as you walk. So and then of course there's headsets. Mm-hmm. No one has really solved that problem yet, but when you look at some of the new glasses that are the same like our glasses, but you can watch something in you can watch your TikToks or you watch anything on Instagram. Those are going to, I think, become prevalent around the world.
Yeah, and we at the same time we have this type of surveillance systems that are watching all the time to the people. So I think we're gonna be overwhelmed because between surveillance systems watching you all the time, walking around the streets, and this type of systems trying to sell you something. Don't you think it's a little bit sometimes scary, this?
Yeah, it is scary because one of the byproducts is something you see happening in various places of the world where that scares so many people who want to preserve the past and a more organized and stable culture that they revolt, and now they want to control it. So there's censorship, and there is limiting people's free speech based on who they are and what they represent. And governments, my fear is that there'll be a growing number of governments around the world that will start wanting to control content to such a degree that it's almost like fascism. And so, the problem is when you have unlimited freedom and unlimited expression, you get a negative reaction from a significant number of people. And as those people get more powerful, that scares me a lot. Both sides scare me. Unlimited expression, content everywhere scares me, as does the reaction that happens as a result of that normally.
So what do you see coming within the next 5 years? We've heard about the edge computing as well, which is have the location where you need the resources for a movie to have the edge computing systems be able to lower the latency, right?
Yeah.
So what do you see coming beyond that within the next 5 to 10 years, Mitch?
Well, it's a little scary in that, big companies are going to know where you are, what you're doing, what you want, no matter where and when you are, wherever you are, whether it's in your house or eating in a restaurant. And they will use that information to make money. And mostly it's getting you to buy something. And so that's going to be, in some ways it's helpful, because, I wish someone knew that I needed razor blades, before I ran out. So I don't have to think about it. So that's all very helpful. But I think there's some, kind of diabolic aspects of this that will result in control, kind of a control of your behavior based on the fact that they, have insight into everything you do and who you are and what you want. And it's, I think what it ends up doing is it creates a conformity and lessens the diversity of the 8 billion humans around the earth, who all in many ways are very different from each other, even though they might have similar characteristics.
Yeah, that's true. We call this podcast the data revolution because we think that everything coming as of now is based on data. You agree with me, maybe?
Absolutely.
Data is everywhere, and we cannot live without information data. We use the cell phones, we use computers and the cars today. How important in this industry became the data a part of the evolution of the entertainment industry? Is the main source of information the data to make decisions, or is more the feeling, the sense making and of the filmmakers?
Well, we are at the turning point of that. I think up till now, I would say, with the exception of marketing content, I would say that, the majority is an artistic sense and feel, and actually resisting using data because the people who would benefit from it have a fear of losing their creative independence. But that, like I said, if studios can prove that they can make a much better piece of content, using kind of more revolutionary, AI applications, then you're going to get more and more content that's made, like that. So,
yeah. You think AI will change the way we see creativity? There's a book called Creativity, maybe you know it, and about Pixar, right?
Yeah.
And how the world of creativity become a culture and an industry. You see AI killing more the creativity. How do we keep it up? How do we keep it awake in the people?
Right. I may think about this, in a kind of a contrary point of view. I've used AI, in many times where it has expanded my creativity, opened my eyes to other ways to accomplish something or to create a story. So what I think can happen is that the creative community can, if they embrace, AI to help them see things they wouldn't see, I think, and then use that to then further, create something completely new. Here's an example is that if you're a doctor, you have, let's say, 20 years as being a doctor in a specialty field, but you can't keep it. So you see a patient with a problem that you've seen before, but you can't keep in your mind all the different possible solutions. You narrow it down to a few choices of things you've done in the past, but you may not have access to all the research done worldwide, whereas an AI engine could tell you about a solution that you may have never heard of. It may have been discovered or created a week ago, in another country. So I think the same thing with, script writers, people who are deciding the creativity of a movie set or the script. I think if they use AI not as a replacement for what they're doing, but as a way to open up their mind to things they, at the moment, they're not thinking of, I think what it does is it adds a more robust and more, kind of a bigger picture of what could be for their output. It just needs to be, I'd hate to see AI replace, a writer, just say, give me a script that, appeals to 25 to 35-year-old males, and I want a budget, of $50 million. AI could write that for you.
It can write it for you. That's true.
It will look, like a first-time scriptwriter. It will look decent enough to go out and try to sell. But, if someone creative starts there and then builds upon it, don't look at it as a total solution, then I'm really excited about, a whole new, side of creativity.
That's good. Is there any book that you recommend to our audience about to keep being creative?
There's, as far as books, it's more, for me, it's more about staying up to date with, podcasts like yours. It's subscribing to the AI newsletters. That's where the real, new information, comes out. And a book, by the time you read it, if it's talking about AI, it's old.
Obsolete.
Yeah, it's obsolete. So, but books are great, when it comes to learning skills as far as, perseverance, management, how you inspire people. There are, like Jack Welch, who ran GE. Yeah, was a big student of effective organizations. And, so if you want to run an organization, some of those things don't change, even though there are certainly changes from when he wrote it, as we've got a different demographic. You can't treat...
The main principles remain the same.
Yeah. But as far as keeping up on, the evolution of AI in the entertainment space, it's all about staying current and reading, about all the new, VO3 just came out in the last
VO3.
month or so. It can create 8 seconds of content. It's not going to be too much longer where VO4 comes out and it can create 20 seconds. So, you just need to stay on top of all those things and go to shows, go to conferences. All those things are great places to learn about it.
To learn new things. One final question, Mitch. We can keep going and going. And what do you think about the competition for AI in the world? You see mainly two countries competing with in the race of AI, China and the US.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen? What's your point of view?
Well, I'm afraid that the US is going to fall behind. And it's mostly due to the controversy of using AI. You can't make progress if you don't use it. And if you're afraid to use it because of the backlash, especially from the unions, then the countries, in particular China, where there isn't this issue, are going to go way ahead. And, it could be that in a few years, China is creating movies using AI that look just like they were made in Hollywood and use big Hollywood actors. So, I think when you've got an environment that inhibits innovation and using innovative products just because, you might be sensitive to it, I think that's a losing proposition. And that's why I think China will do better in the near term.
Well, thank you very much for your time. It has been a pleasure to be with you. We will
thank you.
Be in touch for more content that maybe you can share in the future about what you see coming in this exciting industry, which is the entertainment industry.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Jorge.
Muchas gracias y gracias a todos ustedes por acompañarnos el día de hoy con esta charla especial que tuvimos con Mitch Lowe, fundador o cofundador de Netflix, que nos deja ver cómo se puede lograr un avance utilizando la tecnología, siguiendo con el uso de plataformas y por supuesto trabajando con personas, que al final quien hace que esto suceda son las personas. Este es el podcast de Data Revolution. Les agradecemos su tiempo y síganos hasta la próxima.